Hello, wonderful AP World History students. Tonight we are going to be doing some reading together. So drop your name in the comments when you get here so that I know who is listening. Good to see you all. Hopefully my internet gets a little bit better. It's saying that it's kind of low right now. All right. What I need you to do is pull up your reading questions. They are on slide 14 in your notebook. These are the ones we're going to be working on tonight. Hey, Glenn, good to see you. Hey, Luke, welcome in. Grab those reading questions out of your notebook. You're also going to want to make a Google Doc so that you can put your answers on there as we go through this. So make yourself a Google Doc. And then if you want to copy and paste these on a Google Doc, hey, Nesso, good to see you. I'm going to do that real quick. That way it's easy to follow along. Hey, Jared, welcome in.
I didn't get that.
Oops, Siri thought I was talking to her. Nope, not talking to you. Hey, Trisha. Alvin, welcome in. Good to see you guys. I'm going to make a quick Google Doc here. You can do the same to put your reading questions on. And you want to put the link to this in your Unit 1 assignments. And then just copy and paste those questions in there, and that way it will be very easy for you to put your answers in tonight as we are finding them. And I got these questions from slide 14 of your notebook. Welcome in, everybody. It's good to see you all. If you're just arriving, grab the questions out of your notebook. They're on slide 14. Make yourself a Google document. Put those questions on there. I'm going to pull up the reading questions on my screen, so you won't need to pull up the textbook. You can just have your questions up on your screen. That way you don't have too many things going on. Hey, Vanessa, welcome in. We're going to be starting on page 366 of your textbook, your online textbook. The first question we're looking for is, why are the centuries of the Tang and Song Dynasty in China sometimes referred to as the Golden Age? So that's what we're going to be looking at. And one thing I want to tell you real quick before we get started is keep an eye on the questions that are on the outside of edges of the textbook. These questions are usually the reading questions, and it will help you kind of know where this information is going to be, because this question is right by the topic Golden Age. So our information about this question, or to answer this question, is probably going to be in this section. So when you're doing your reading questions, pay attention to that. That will help you know where to read. All right, is everybody ready with their Google Doc? You should have your questions pasted on there like that. This is the first one that we are answering. So we're going to look for our answer right here about the Tang and Song Dynasty and why it is the Golden Age. Okay, I'm assuming everybody's ready, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start right here, and as we read along here, I'm going to be looking for the answers as well as kind of talking you through this a little bit. And let's see if I can, nope, that's a search. I don't want that. Okay, I'm going to see if I could zoom up on that, but I think that's as big as it gets. All right, hey, Ridwan, how's it going? There's your little raccoon icon. I remember that. Ridwan was in my virtual class last year, and he used that raccoon icon. All right, here we go. So we're looking for Tang and Song dynasties and why it's the Golden Age. It says, unlike the fall of the Western Roman Empire, where political fragmentation proved to be a permanent condition, China regained its unity under the Sui dynasty. Its emperors solidified that unity by a vast extension of the country's canal system, stretching some 1,200 miles in length, and described by one scholar as an engineering feat without parallel in the world of its time. Yeah, in the world of its time. Okay, so put in that question, it doesn't answer this question, but this is still important information. Put down Sui dynasty equals extended canal system. Sui Dynasty, and it's right here, equals extended canal system. That's important to know. Yes, living your life. That's right, Ridwan. That's funny. Hey, Damien, welcome in. It's good to see you too. Oh, it's Old Home Week. All right. Those canals linked northern and, wait for it, southern China economically and contributed much to the prosperity that followed. But the ruthlessness of the Sui emperors and the futile military campaign to conquer Korea exhausted the state's resources, alienated many people, and prompted the overthrow of the dynasty. So remember, we were talking about the dynastic cycle, and when they lose the mandate of heaven, the new dynasty comes about. And so all of those things made the new dynasty come about. That's okay, Javi. We just started. This dynastic collapse, however, witnessed no prolonged disintegration of the Chinese state. The two dynasties that followed, the Tang and the Song, built on the Sui foundations of renewed unity. Together, they established patterns of Chinese life that endured into the 20th century despite a 50-year period of disunity between the two dynasties. Culturally, this era has been long regarded as the golden age of arts and literature, setting standards of excellence in poetry, landscape, painting, and ceramics. All right, so here's your first part to that answer. Question number 1, why is it considered the golden age? Put down that they were known for poetry, landscape, painting, and ceramics. And then it says, particularly during the Song Dynasty, an explosion of scholarship gave rise to Neo-Confucianism. Make sure and write Neo-Confucianism down, and the definition is highlighted in green for you. It says, an effort to revive Confucian thinking while incorporating into it some of the insights of Buddhism and Taoism. Somebody asked me today if they ever kind of put Confucian ideas into other ideas. Neo-Confucianism would be one of those examples. Reviving it, but then also adding in some Buddhist thought and some Taoist thought. Then it says, politically, the Tang and Song dynasties built a state structure that endured for 1,000 years. 6 major ministries, personal finance, rights, army, justice, and public works, were accompanied by the censorate, an agency that exercised surveillance over the rest of the government, checking on the character and competence of public officials. To staff this bureaucracy, the examination system was revived and made more elaborate, facilitated by the ability to print books for the first time in the world's history. So put down that the examination system is revived. And that is used to staff the government or to staff the bureaucracy. So if you wanted a job in government, you had to pass the exam. And it says efforts to prevent cheating on the exam included searching candidates, entering the examination hall, and placing numbers rather than names on their papers. Schools and colleges proliferated to prepare candidates for the rigorous exams, which became a central feature of upper class life. A leading world historian has described the Tang Dynasty China as the best ordered state in the world. All right, let's see if there's anything else. Yeah, okay, so here's some more that goes with that question. Selecting officials on the basis of merit represented a challenge to establish aristocratic families held on public office, or their hold on public office. So basically what that's saying is that officials are going to be allowed to be chosen based on their merit or based on their performance on a test or their intelligence level. Okay, so now it's not just going to be given to you because you're rich. You have to actually prove that you can do the job. Still, a substantial percentage of official positions went to the sons of the privileged, even if they had not passed the exam. So in the idea was that they had to be based on merit, but as you can see, there were some that still got in. Moreover, because of education and the examination system grew far more rapidly than the number of official positions, many who passed lower level exams could not be accommodated with a bureaucratic appointment, so there weren't enough high level jobs. Often, however, they were able to combine landowning and success in the examination system to maintain an immense cultural prestige and prominence in their local areas. Despite the state's periodic efforts to redistribute land in favor of the peasantry, the great families of large landowners continued to encroach on peasant plots, a recurring pattern in rural China from ancient times to the present. Underlying these cultural and political achievements was an economic revolution that made Song Dynasty China by far the richest, most skilled, and most populous country on earth. The most obvious sign of China's prosperity was its rapid growth in population, which jumped from about 50 million or 60 million during the Tang Dynasty to 120 million by 1200. Behind this doubling of the population were remarkable achievements in agricultural production, particularly the adoption of fast ripening, drought-resistant strain of rice from Vietnam. So for this question, they also had agricultural production or achievements in agricultural production. So put that down on that question. And then an example of that is the fast ripening, drought resistant rice from Vietnam. All right, if I'm going too fast, just let me know. Many people found their way to the cities, making China the most urbanized country in the world. So put down that people start to urbanize. We're still on question 1. Dozens of Chinese cities numbered over 100,000, while the Song Dynasty capital of Hangzhou was home to more than 1 million people. A Chinese observer in 1235 provided a vivid description of the city. Specialized markets abounded for meat, herbs, vegetables, books, rice, and much more, with troops of actors performing for the crowds. Restaurants advertised their unique offerings: sweet bean soup, pickled dates, juicy lungs, yum, meat pies, pig's feet, and some offered vegetarian fare for religious banquets. Inns of various kinds appealed to different groups. Those that served only wine, a practice known as hitting the cup, were regarded as unfit for polite company. Luxuriant inns marked by red lanterns featured prostitutes and wine chambers equipped with beds. Specialized agencies managed elaborate dinner parties for the wealthy, complete with perfume and medicine office to help sober up the guests. Schools for musicians offered 13 different courses. Numerous clubs provided championship for poets, fishermen, Buddhists, physical fitness enthusiasts, antique collectors, horse lovers, and many other groups. No wonder the Italian visitor Marco Polo described Hangzhou later in the 13th century as beyond dispute the finest and noblest city in the world. So their cities were very elaborate. Supplying these cities with food was made possible by an immense network of internal waterways, canals, rivers, and lakes stretching perhaps 30,000 miles. They provided cheap transportation system that bound the country together economically and created the world's most populous trading area. So there was a lot of trading going on. Make sure and put that down for your question. I'm going to check this other question. Okay. Industrial production soared in both large-scale enterprises employing hundreds of workers and in smaller backyard furnaces. China's iron industry increased. So put down industrial production and iron industry increased. By the 11th century, it was providing the government with 32,000 suits of armor and 16 million iron arrowheads annually, in addition to supplying the metal for coins, tools, and construction, and bells in Buddhist monasteries. Technological innovation in other fields also flourished. Inventions in printing, both woodblock and movable type, generated the world's first printed books, and by 1,000 relatively cheap books on religious, agricultural, mathematical, and medical topics became widely available in China. Its navigational and shipbuilding technologies led the world. The Chinese invention of gunpowder created within a few centuries a revolution in military affairs that had global dimensions. Most remarkably, perhaps, all of this occurred within the world's most highly commercialized society, in which producing for the market rather than for local consumption became a very widespread phenomenon. Cheap transportation allowed peasants to grow specialized crops for sale while they purchased rice and other staples at the market. In addition, government demands for taxes paid in cash rather than in kind required peasants to sell something, their products or their labor, in order to meet their obligations. So where it says to pay their taxes in cash rather than in kind, that means that before cash, peasants had to pay their taxes in rice. But now they had cash to be able to pay that. So now the government was requiring them to pay it in cash rather than pay it in rice. So now they have to either sell their rice, their products, or they have to sell their labor. The growing use of paper money as well as financial instruments such as letters of credit, promissory notes further contributed to the commercialization of Chinese society. Two prominent scholars have described Hey Fardine, good to see you. The output increased, population grew, skills multiplied, and a burst of inventiveness made Song China far wealthier than ever before, or than any of its contemporaries. So it was very wealthy, and it increased population. The next question, in what ways did women's lives change during the Tang and Song dynasty? You see it out here on the side, so that gives you a hint. That's where your information is going to be. It says the golden age of the Song dynasty, China was perhaps less than golden for many of its women, for the era marked yet another turning point in the history of Chinese patriarchy. Under the influence of steppe nomads, whose women led less restricted lives, elite Chinese women of the Tang era had, at least in the north, had participated in social life with greater freedom than in earlier times. So elite women in the Tang dynasty had less restrictions, and they were able to participate in social life. Now, right here where it talks about the steppe nomads, that would be the nomadic people that lived on the steppes. One of those groups that we're going to talk about is the Mongols, and their women lived very little restricted lives. They pretty much did the same thing as men. Okay, so painting and statues show aristocratic women riding horses, while the Queen Mother of the West, a Taoist deity, was widely worshipped by female Taoist priests and practitioners. By the Song dynasty, however, a reviving Confucianism and rapid economic growth seemed to tighten patriarchal restrictions on women and to restore some of the earlier Han Dynasty notions of women's submission and passivity. So during the Tang Dynasty, the elite women had a little bit more freedom. But then as we move to the Song Dynasty, we have the revival of Confucianism and economic growth, which restricts women more. And then it says, once again, Confucian writers highlighted the subordination of women to men and the need to keep males and females separate in every domain of life. So remember, Confucian is women are subordinate to men and they are restricted. And then this is a quote from a Song Dynasty historian. He said, the boy leads the girl follows the boy. The duty of husbands to be resolute and wives to be docile begin with this. For men, masculinity came to be defined less in terms of horseback riding, athleticism, and warrior values of the northern nomads, and more in terms of refined pursuits of calligraphy, scholarship, painting, and poetry. So men were supposed to be more educated. That was where they found their masculinity at this time. Corresponding views of feminine qualities emphasize women's weakness, reticence, delicacy. Women were also frequently viewed as a distraction to men's pursuits of a contemplative and introspective life. The remarriage of widows, though legally permissible, was increasingly condemned, for the walk through two courtyards is a source of shame for a woman. So during the Song Dynasty, widows were allowed to remarry, but it was often looked down upon. The most compelling expression of a tightening patriarchy lay in foot binding. Make sure and put this down. This is important. Foot binding would be under the Song Dynasty. Apparently beginning among dancers and courtesans in the 10th and 11th century, this practice involved the tight wrapping of young girls' feet, usually breaking the bones of the foot and causing intense pain. During and after the Song Dynasty, foot binding spread widely among elite families and later became even more widespread in Chinese society. It was associated with the new image of female beauty and eroticism that emphasized small size, frailty and deference, and served to keep women restricted to the inner quarters, where Confucian tradition asserted that they belonged. So basically, what they would do is they would wrap the foot really tight when the girl was little, and it would break the bones and kind of crunch the foot up to be very small. And it's super painful because it's very hard to walk on broken bones. And the foot would stay really small. And as the woman aged, she could barely walk. If you've seen Mulan, the grandmother in Mulan walks with a cane and her feet are very tiny. That's because her feet were bound. So the purpose was to keep them confined to the home. If their feet are very small and it hurts to walk, then they won't leave the home very much. So let's see, where were we? Many mothers impose this painful procedure on their daughter, perhaps to enhance their marriage prospects and to assist them in competing with concubines for the attention of their husbands. For many women, it became a rite of passage and a source of pride in their tiny feet and the beautiful slippers that encased them, even the occasion for poetry in some literate women. So it was this sense of pride that they could do this. And remember, this is just mostly with the elite women because peasant women have to be able to work. There's a picture of it right there. It looks really painful. Okay. So it distinguishes Chinese women from their barbarian counterparts and elite women from commoners and peasants. So it would just be the elite women that would do this. Furthermore, a rapidly commercializing economy undermined the position of women in the textile industry. Urban workshops and state factories run by men increasingly took over the skilled tasks of weaving textiles, especially silk, which had previously been the work of rural women in their homes. Although these women continued to tend silkworms and spin silk thread, they had lost the more lucrative income generating the work of weaving silk fabrics. So you can put down that the textile industry and factories were putting women out of work, because the women used to be the one weaving the fabrics, and now the factories did it. They do get more opportunities, though, and they're highlighted here in yellow. In the cities, women operated restaurants, sold fish and vegetables, and worked as maids, cooks, and dressmakers. So you can put down that city gave them opportunities such as, and then give a couple of examples. The growing prosperity of elite families funneled increasing numbers of women into roles as concubines, entertainers, courtesans, and prostitutes. Their ready availability surely reduced the ability of wives to negotiate as equals with their husbands, setting women against one another and creating endless household jealousies. That basically means that there was constant competition for their husbands. In other ways, the Song Dynasty witnessed more positive trends in the lives of women. Their property rights expanded in terms of controlling their own dowries and inheriting properties from their family. So dowry is a gift that would be given to the husband when he marries the woman. And now they're going to have a little bit more rights. The woman will have a little bit more rights in controlling her dowry. So make sure and put down that their property rights expanded. And an example of that is being able to control their dowries and inheriting property from their families. So then at the bottom it says Song Dynasty China, in short, offered a mixture of tightening restrictions and new opportunities for women. So Song Dynasty is a mixture of tightening up on women and also offering them some new opportunities. Let's see. Yeah, that's the next question. Just want to make sure we're on the right track here. All right, so the next question is, how did the Chinese and their nomadic neighbors to the north view each other? So it says, from early times to the 19th century, China's many interactions with a larger Eurasian world shaped both China's own development and that of world history more generally. The country's most enduring and intense interaction with foreigners lay to the north, involving the many nomadic, pastoral, and semi-agricultural peoples of the steppes. Living in areas unable to sustain Chinese-style farming, the northern nomads had long focused their economies around the raising of livestock. So nomads in the north couldn't farm, so they raised livestock instead. And their mastery of horseback riding. Organized local and small mobile kinship-based groups, that's what it is, sometimes called tribes. These people also periodically created much larger and powerful states or confederations that could draw on the impressive horsemanship and military skills of virtually the entire male population of their societies. Such specialized pastoral societies needed grain and other agricultural products from China, and their leaders developed a taste for Chinese manufactured and luxury goods, wine and silk, for example, with which they could attract and reward followers. Thus, the nomads were drawn like a magnet toward China, trading, raiding, and extorting to obtain the resources so vital to their way of life. For 2,000 years or more, pressure from the steppes and the intrusion of nomadic peoples were constant factors in China's historical development. So they constantly had this interaction with the nomads. Okay. From the nomads' point of view, the threat often came from the Chinese, who periodically directed their own military forces deep into the steppes, built the Great Wall to keep the nomads out, and often proved unwilling to allow pastoral peoples easy access to trading opportunities within China. So that's the nomads' point of view. Do you think the Chinese have that same point of view? Probably not, right? It's going to be different based on who you are. And yet the Chinese needed the nomads. Their lands were the source of horses, so essential for the Chinese military. Other products of the steppes and the forest beyond, such as skins, furs, hides, and amber, were also of value in China. Furthermore, pastoral nomads controlled much of the Silk Road trading network, which funneled goods from the West into China. The continuing interaction between China and the northern nomads brought together peoples occupying different environments, practicing different economies, governing themselves with different institutions, and thinking about the world in quite a different way. So the question is, how did Chinese and their nomadic neighbors to the north view each other? You can put down that they are completely different. The Chinese are farmers. The nomads raise livestock. The nomads live in small kinship-based groups. So you wouldn't see any big urban centers with the nomads. It's going to be all small groups. They're also pastoral societies. That's another word for raising livestock. And they need the grain from China because China is an agricultural community or agricultural area. They're also getting Chinese manufactured and luxury goods. So the nomads want those manufactured and luxury goods. And what are the Chinese getting from the nomads? The Chinese are getting horses from the nomads. And other products such as skins, furs, hides, amber. And here's all their differences. They occupy different environments. They practice different economies. They govern themselves differently. And they think about the world in different ways. Okay, the next question is about the tribute system. So it says, describe the tribute system, and then what assumptions underlay the tribute system. So let's see if we can figure that out. It says, an enduring outcome of this cross-cultural encounter was a particular view the Chinese held of themselves and their neighbors, fully articulated by the time of the Han Dynasty, and lasting for more than 2 millennia. That understanding cast China as the Middle Kingdom, the center of the world, infinitely superior to barbarian peoples beyond its borders. So China feels as though they are superior to the nomads. Okay. With its long history, great cities, refined taste, sophisticated intellectual and artistic achievements, bureaucratic state, literate elite, and prosperous economy, China represented civilization. All of this in Chinese thinking was in sharp contrast to the rude cultures and primitive life of the northern nomads, who continually moved about like beasts and birds living in tents. So China thinks that they are civilized compared to the nomads, who are more barbaric, and ate mostly meat and milk, particularly lived on their horses, while making war on everyone within reach. Educated Chinese saw their own society as self-sufficient, requiring little from the outside world, while barbarians, quite understandably, sought access to China's wealth and wisdom. Furthermore, China was willing to permit that access under controlled conditions, for its sense of superiority did not preclude the possibility that barbarians could become civilized Chinese. So they're willing to help the barbarians a little bit. China was a radiating civilization, graciously shedding its light most fully to nearby barbarians and with diminished intensity to those further away. Such was the general understanding of literate Chinese about their own civilization in relation to northern nomads and other non-Chinese people. So they thought that they were more barbaric. That worldview also took shape as a practical system for managing China's relationship with these people, known as the tribute system. It was a set of practices that required non-Chinese authorities to acknowledge Chinese superiority and their own subordinate place in the Chinese-centered world order. Foreigners seeking access to China had to send a delegation to the Chinese court, where they would perform the kowtow, a series of ritual bowings and prostrations, and present their tribute, produce of value from their countries to the Chinese emperor. In return for these expressions of submission, he would grant permission for foreigners to trade in China's rich markets and would provide them with gifts or bestowals upon worth far more than the tribute they had offered. This was the mechanism by which successive Chinese dynasties attempted to regulate their relationship with northern nomads, with neighboring states such as Korea, Vietnam, Tibet, and Japan, and after 1500 with the European barbarians from across the sea. All right, welcome in, Ayman. We're working on reading questions. I think we're on question number 4. You can watch the first part later. So describe the tribute system and then what assumptions underlay the tribute system. So here's your definition of the tribute system right here. It is a set of practices that required non-Chinese authorities to acknowledge Chinese superiority and their own subordinate place in a Chinese-centered world. What does that mean? They basically had to prove that they were subordinate to the Chinese because the Chinese were superior. And how they did that is right here. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to write that down. Make sure you get the word kowtow in there. Kowtow is basically falling face down on the ground and bowing before the Chinese, getting as low as you can get to show them that you honor them and that you respect them. And then also make sure that you put down that once they kowtow, they present China with a tribute. In return, China would then allow them to trade with China. And would sometimes provide them with gifts as well. All right. You can also put down that this tribute system was used with nomads as well as Korea, Vietnam, Tibet, and Japan. And later on, the Europeans. Right, then it says, often this system seemed to work. Over the centuries, countless foreign delegations proved willing to present their tribute. say the required words, and perform the necessary rituals required to gain access to the material goods of China. Aspiring non-Chinese rulers also gained prestige as they basked in the reflected glory of even this subordinate association with great Chinese civilization. The official titles, seals, and office and ceremonial robes they received from China proved useful in their local struggles for power. So basically what that's saying is the gifts that they would get from China helped them maintain their power in their own areas of the world. All right, how did the tribute system in practice differ from the ideal Chinese understanding of its operation? So let's see how it differed from its actual operation. It says, but the tribute system also disguised some realities that contradicted its assumptions. On occasion, China was confronting not separate and small-scale barbarian societies, but large and powerful nomadic empires able to deal with China on at least equal terms. An early nomadic confederacy was that of, I think it's the Xinjiao, but I'm not sure. Established about the same time as the Han Dynasty and eventually reaching from Manchuria to Central Asia. Devastating raids into northern China persuaded the Chinese emperor to negotiate an arrangement that recognized the nomadic state as a political equal, promised its leader a princess in marriage, and most important, agreed to supply him annually with large quantities of grain, wine, and silk. Although these goods were officially termed gifts, grants in accord with the tribute system, they were in fact tribute in reverse, or even protection money. In return for those goods so critical for the functioning of the nomadic state, the Zhangniao agreed to refrain from military incursions into China. The basic realities of the situation were summed up in the warning to the Han Dynasty in the 1st century BCE. It said, just make sure that the silks and grain stuff you bring the Zhangniao are the right measure and quality, that's all. What's the need for talking? If the goods are delivered are up to measure and good quality, all right. But if there's any deficiency or the quality is no good, then when the autumn harvest comes, we will take our horses and trample all over your crops. So they had to do this in order to protect themselves. Maybe it's Zhang Nu. I need to look that up. Okay, something similar occurred during the Tang Dynasty as a series of Turkic empires arose in Mongolia. They extorted large gifts from the Chinese. One of these people, the Uyghurs, actually rescued the Tang Dynasty from a serious internal revolt in the 750s. In return, the Uyghur leader gained one of the Chinese emperor's daughters as a wife and arranged a highly favorable exchange of poor quality horses for high quality silk that brought 500,000 rolls of precious fabric annually into the Uyghur lands. Despite the rhetoric of the tribute system, the Chinese were not always able to dictate the terms of their relationship with the northern nomads. So the whole point of the tribute system was to benefit the Chinese, but in some cases, it didn't always benefit the Chinese because the nomads were stronger. So that's basically what that part's talking about. Your question is, how did it differ from the ideal Chinese understanding of the operation? So put down something along the lines that the Chinese wanted it to benefit them. And it worked that way as long as the nomads were weaker than the Chinese. But sometimes they weren't weaker. And in that case, the Chinese had to pay the nomads a tribute. And you can put these two groups down as examples. So basically, the tribute system was supposed to benefit China, but sometimes if the nomads were too powerful, then the Chinese, it was like flipped around. The tribute system was flipped around, and the Chinese had to give tribute to them. Then it says, steppe nomads were generally not much interested in actually conquering and ruling China. It was much easier and more profitable to extort goods from a functioning Chinese state. On occasion, though, that state broke down and various nomadic groups moved in to pick up the pieces, conquering and governing parts of China. Such a process took place following the fall of the Han Dynasty and again after the collapse of the Tang Dynasty, when the Khitan and the Jurchen peoples established states that encompassed parts of northern China as well as major areas in the steppes. Both of them required the Chinese Song Dynasty, located further south, to deliver annually huge quantities of silk, silver, and tea, some of which found its way to the Silk Road trading network. The practice of bestowing gifts on barbarians, long a part of the tribute system, allowed the proud Chinese to imagine that they were still in control of the situation, even as they were paying heavily for protection from nomadic incursion. Those gifts, in turn, provided vital economic resources to the nomadic states. Okay, what's our next question? Question 6, in what ways did China and the nomads influence each other? That's what we're on next. And there's the question right here. So I'm going to let you do 6 through 9 on your own. I think you're getting the gist of what you need to do here. So 6 through 9 will be due on Monday. You need to put the link in your notebook on page, what page is it? It's the one where you're going to put Unit 1 assignment. So you're going to turn it in here. Make sure that you unrestrict it so that I can see it. And you're going to finish the last 4 questions right here. Keep in mind, we are on page 376, so that's where you're going to start. And if you flip through here, you'll find the questions on the side. So read the sections that correspond with those questions on the side. Okay? Does anybody have any questions before we hop off of here? Also, keep in mind that you log into the textbook through the hub. So if you get into our class on the hub, it's the little icon that says AP World History. Give it a minute for it to pop up, okay? All right, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and end this live then. Go ahead and finish up those questions. No problem, Mesa. You can totally watch from the beginning after I post it. It should be posted pretty much right away as soon as I end it, so you can access it that way. And if you have any questions, just let me know tomorrow, all right? Have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much for joining. Before you hop off of here, don't forget to hit that like, and if you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and do that and hit the notifications so that you don't miss anything. All right, I will see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and don't forget to finish up the questions.